Hey, what's up? This is Will Sver with Abysmal Hymns, and as promised, me and Reza Mills are back with our top five heaviest songs. And this was interesting. So first off, it was done a little differently than we normally do things here, where normally me and Reza are just kind of going off our lists, and I don't know what he has, and he doesn't have know what I have, but we're kind of like guessing, as you've probably heard us do. Sometimes that's why I always let him go first in case I have to pivot and choose something else. Um, but this time, just to make sure that everybody was familiar with what we're doing, we actually shared the songs that we're including on this list just to make us both informed. And it's interesting because it's I mean, as you guys know, that we have similar tastes but different angles of music that we listen to. I'm more of the metal guy, and but it goes to show, like as we've talked about, heavy can sound differently. There's more than one ways to skin a cat in that regard. Sometimes it's the attitude. Sometimes it's sonically heavy more than like heavy metal. Like, we've talked about bands like Swans doing that before. Um, so yeah, so there's some examples, and I think you're gonna hear that as, we've pulled actually from different time periods too. Reza's covered one end of the spectrum in time periods, and I think my first song picks up in like 1999. So yeah. So with that, I'm gonna let him get us started.
All right. You mentioned metal there, and I've got a couple of songs in that vein, albeit maybe not, maybe not quite as on the extreme end, or as maybe as current as your good self. But anyway, I decided to start off with a legendary band, and probably one of my all-time favorites. I don't know how you pronounce it. I pronounce it Celtic Frost, and I'm taking a track from their debut album, although I guess it's technically an EP, Morbid Tales. And this is a song that was chosen um, because I think quite a few people have covered it, but I particularly remember Sepultura doing a cover of it. And I'm talking about Procreation of the Wicked. And, it's a very, very crushing tune. It's almost like it's got this lurching, groove-laden riff. Um, in fact, yeah, I just love it for that reason. I mean, a lot of the album is quite quick by comparison, Into the Crypt of Rays and, Visions of Mortality, etc. This is one of the slower numbers and quite doomy, I would say, with this really sort of proto black metal type vocal. Of course, because they were I guess, alongside Venom and Bathory, etc., the kind of the godfathers of that stuff. So yeah, it's certainly a song that I've always had a huge amount of time for, and yeah, hence why it's my first choice.
Yeah, that works for me. Celtic Frost is an interesting band because
Hmm.
they I remember first hearing them on this college radio station that I would listen to in high school, and it mainly, since that was like around 1988 to the early 90s, it was a lot of thrash. And so you would hear Celtic Frost like kind of wedged in between DRI and Slayer.
Hmm.
And but they were different. I wouldn't call them doom, although they were like slower and more deliberate. They
Yeah,
did have some more like up-tempo songs too.
sure,
They eventually got really weird. And but when I was listening to this song, almost reminded me of like where you could hear bands like Neurosis taking cues from, because there's more of like a sludgy thing. Like I've always called sludge like what happens when punks try to play Black Sabbath.
yeah,
And there's definitely that very like deliberate energy to it.
sure,
And so with all these songs, no matter what time period they're from, I just kind of imagine what you hear on album versus what would have been like to see these guys live in the 80s. And I'm sure that they were like loud as hell, because they were playing with bands like Venom.
sure.
So yeah, I think it's a fitting song for the list, and they definitely have their place in heavy music.
So you're more of a musician. Again, that sort of stuff goes way over my head, but I'm just reading a description and it says the opening guitar riff begins on a diminished fifth, a B flat over E minor, introducing an unsettling dissonance. So that's probably why I also included that. Although I couldn't exactly phrase it like that because I'm useless when it comes to discussing
Yeah, I
music.
mean that you notice that like Celtic Frost has a darker sound, like
Yeah.
them,
Yes.
Merciful Fate. So that diminished chord is what gives the darker sound. Anything that's
Sure.
like in a minor key or diminished. There's your
Yeah.
free music lessons, kid. So there you go. And I think that that's kind of what made them stand out from the pack at that time too, is that they were darker. And we've talked about how, Celtic Frost even like flirted with like goth in places. So,
Mm, sure.
all right. Well, I will crank out my first one, which is it's not from one of the band's normal albums. It's from a split EP they did
Yeah.
with Agoraphobic Nosebleed, which is a grindcore band.
Yeah.
And these guys were kind of like the first metalcore band, I want to say,
Yeah.
because they started off definitely a hardcore band, and then kind of like, I mean, you could almost say Integrity was too, but they came out shortly after Integrity. So it's Converge, and I'm going with from the Poacher Diaries the song "My Great Devastator," which is not just pummeling all the way through. I mean, it is like it starts off like very like deliberate and harrowing, and
Mm,
then there's even like a place where it cuts out into this weird melodic thing where they use like samples of I think Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And but in the middle of the song, there's this freaking galloping riff that they come in with that is just like from there on out, you're just like extremely punished. The first time I heard it, I was probably high as giraffe balls and listening to it on the floor and had the stereo speakers pointed right at me, and it was a lot.
yeah. Yeah, I have a mate who's really, really into Converge. I like them as well, although, um, like with most things in life, I kind of lost track with them. But yeah, I always found them quite interesting. Like they were very, very brutal. They could be very sludgy and heavy, and yet very, very chaotic at the same time. So like the chaos of hardcore. In some ways, although it's probably I don't know if I'm drawing a right comparison here, probably not, but they kind of remind me in spirit anyway of a band like not Agrophobic Nose, but Dazzling Killmen. Just in the terms of the kind of the jazzy weirdness in there as well with the hardcore. Um, the difference being, of course, is that of course Converge come from more of a metal wing, I guess, whereas Dazzling are kind of bit more sort of hardcore and punk, old school. So, but there are sort of similarities. So that's what always sort of drew me into a band like Converge. They're a very interesting band, and yeah, you're right. I had to listen to this song before we came on, and yeah, it's exactly as you describe. Really, very chaotic. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And I mean, that's the thing I think that gives Converge the edge is they definitely experiment. They weren't just like sticking to a certain formula, which is what broke them away from just being a hardcore band.
Sure. Yeah, in same. I mean, again, probably not an apt comparison, but maybe sort of like kind of Dillinger Escape Plan. There seemed to be a whole glut of bands like that at that time that had that chaos to them, heavy, kind of hardcore, kind of metal, kind of all over the place. And I think you're right. It kind of stands them out a little bit and makes them a lot more interesting than I don't know in Hatebreed, for instance, who I
Yeah,
find.
yeah. And I think, a lot of them, if you were to trace their lineage back, probably picked up some of that from a band called Botch.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
like one of the first kind of math rocky
Sure.
um bands. And I mean, like we've talked about when we did our Black Flag things, Black Flag had a little bit of like experimental chaos to them. So,
Sure. Yeah, it's
you
no
know.
bad thing. Everyone needs that. Cool.
All
Okay.
right, what you got?
All right, so let's go to something even more classic, and it's going way back, even further back than Celtic Frost. It's Sabbath, of course, Black Sabbath. I'm going from a track from their Volume 4 album, a record that I believe they had writer's block at the time because, well, let's just say the older Colombian marching powder was plentiful. So yeah, I think they found it a bit difficult to come up with ideas, but they eventually managed it. And the track I'm going for on this record is actually, I'm trying to remember if it's the last song. It is. It's called Under the Sun. And my God, I mean, Sabbath always were heavy, but this is something else altogether. This is almost like the absolute blueprint for like St. Vitus, and like a song like which you brought up on our Soundgarden special, 4th of July. It just has that sort of vibe to it. It's kind of massive detuned downstroke riffing, sort of doom plodding, doom tempos, and then it shifts into the acoustic stuff. You got the lyrical fare, which is kind of rejecting the religious dogma to more of a libertarian perspective. And so, yeah, I always loved this song. It's definitely a deeper cut when it comes to Sabbath's catalogue. I get so fed up when people say, "Oh, Sabbath, yeah, paranoid." Yeah, a bit more to it than that. There's this as well. Seriously, listen to this tune. So yeah, I've always loved it for that reason. So a deeper cut, but a very rewarding one.
It's funny, right before I got on here and I was listening, you brought up Paranoid. I was listening to Typo Negative's cover of Paranoid,
Yeah,
which which I think they should have done the original one. It was like super slow.
sure.
And it kind of highlights, this song, which has that contrast. I think that that verse riff is more powerful because of how they lead off the um the song with that kind of doomy feel to it. And I mean, all metal has descended from Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, you can't do anything but respect them. So
Well, every single band since has either sped it up or slowed it down and tried to vary basically and build upon that template that Sabbath created. Even if they weren't into Sabbath particularly, they were still, by osmosis, pardon the pun, it seemed to sort of find its way into certain band sounds. So, yeah, definitely very important group.
right, for sure. Yeah. I am for my next pick gonna kind of divert from metal. I think this is the one song that I have on here that is not metal at all, but is super heavy and is from 2012 from this Industrial Projects Ursus Americanus album, and it is Author and Punisher's Terror Bird,
Hmm.
which is super crushing. And it's really interesting when I don't know if you've ever seen this guy perform, but he has all these, and I've interviewed him a couple times. He has all these machines that he's built that kind of makes him a one-man band, although he has recently on the last album included a guitar player. So it gives him a little more of a ministry-like sound, but Um, I think that this song kind of takes what Godflesh did and stomps on it like a giant robot. Um, yeah.
He is someone that it's Tristan, isn't it?
Hmm.
Tristan Sean, is that it? He's someone that I've heard a few things of his. I haven't really delved properly into it, but what I've heard I've really enjoyed. I think he's a really interesting performer, one man industrial project. I mean, it's not an entirely new concept, of course, because Trent Reznor, etc. But yeah, I really like what I hear. It's certainly takes what Godflesh pioneered in the late 80s, early 90s, um, and really ramps it up even more. And that song you describe, I mean, I had to listen to it before we came on. It's brilliant. I definitely have to dig more into them, but I'm certainly enjoying what I'm hearing, that's for sure.
Right, sure. And so he even, the albums after this get maybe not as heavy, but
Yeah.
more musically layered. So I think even if you went backwards in his catalog, it
Hmm.
would you would kind of deconstruct what he was doing.
Sure,
But I think it's a little more rewarding because there's more. I mean, nothing against it. I mean, this is a great song and it's extremely powerful and heavy.
sure.
But something can be said, for nuance and melody and that type of thing.
Hmm.
And later on, some of the songs that I picked might not be the band's most intense songs, but I think that they're heavier because they have some groove to them. But yeah, as for this song, it's just, pretty crushing.
Absolutely, yeah. As I say, I think I've heard sections. Is the album called Cruella? Is that how you say it?
Yeah,
Uh,
Krula, that's the album before the last one.
Yeah, I mean, I liked what I heard on there as well. So sometimes, you like an artist, but for some reason, you're just not in the right frame of mind to necessarily check out their entire catalogue or dig into them. But at some stage, he's definitely high up on the list to, warrant further investigation as part of my homework, really. So I've got a lot of that on at the moment. But yeah, I certainly enjoyed what I heard. So yeah, nice one.
Cool. All right, what you got?
Right. Now then, it feels kind of apt, really, that you've gone for something that isn't necessarily quote unquote metal. This definitely isn't my next choice. And they're a band that have actually proven very, very influential, famously with Nirvana, who Cobain wore a lot of their t-shirts. I mean, the Melvins, who, you know, you could definitely hear that, as well as obviously being inspired by Black Flag. And I'm talking about the band Flipper. Um, Kind of a strange band for the time that they existed because obviously at that time hardcore was about, cut the bridge in half, go at 2000 miles an hour, lots of screaming right in your face, ready to start riots and what have you. And Flipper sort of inverted all of that because they just slowed things way down. And the album I'm talking about, it's called Generic Flipper, and the song is called Life is Cheap. It's the second track on the record. And it's really doomy, this sort of, trudging bass line by the late Will Shatter. And then you've got this really chaotic feedback heavy guitar work. And the vocals are really eerie. They put this really strange kind of chipmunk style vocal effect on it. I don't know what they've done. They've manipulated the vocal. It makes it sound really creepy. And it's just really, really cynical and brooding and dark. And I think that kind of touches upon what you said at the start about, heavy can be open to interpretation. It can be all sorts of things. It's not just, great big fuck off, amps and, and all that sort of thing. It can just be tempo, it can be mood, it can be emotion and all that sort of thing. And for me, I've always been a huge fan of these guys. I actually saw them live in 2019 with David Yao, and they were brilliant. So yeah, this definitely a little bit off the beaten track, more noise rock, I guess, a bit post-punk in there, but also very sludgy and dark and ominous. So, Life is Cheap by Flipper.
Yeah, with this song, I think that the lyrics really help.
Yeah,
I think that that kind of sets the tone, which, for me, lyrics are like a huge part. So if you're, not matching up the lyrics with the music, I mean, I can appreciate some, like the Smiths, where you have more grim lyrics over happy music, works better for me than happy lyrics over heavy music.
sure.
Um, so yeah, so I think that that kind of helps set the tone for this one. It is, I kind of see it as like proto noise rock,
Yeah,
but you can definitely hear where a lot of bands that I'm into, like Crippling Alcoholism or Chat Pile, definitely pulled some inspiration from these guys too.
yeah.
Um, they're way ahead of their time. They're a band that I could probably stand to dig a little more into, but
I
yeah.
think you would be right. I think you would absolutely love them, knowing your kind of taste as well. There's this album, obviously, and then there's the follow-up, Gone Fishing, which is really, really good. Tiny bit different, but same sort of vibe. Um, and they've had their fair share of tragedy. I mean, Will Shatter, who I said was late, great. died of an overdose, and they had a guy replaced him. He died of an overdose. I don't mean that to be funny, of course, but it's kind of, like bloody hell, it was a dangerous band to be
It's
in.
good to be consistent.
Absolutely. I'm surprised David Yao still with us, to be honest with you, as a result of
Yeah,
playing.
I don't know if I think David Yao kind of cleaned it up a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad, because he's a brilliant frontman. He suited the band well. So I yeah, but for you to do some homework this time around,
Yeah.
certainly dig into them. I think you will absolutely love it.
All right, I can do that.
Cool.
So let's see what I got for my next one. I think I'm kind of getting back into metal. I mean, these guys are I see them as like a cross between hardcore and grindcore. The song is only a minute and 30 seconds,
Yeah.
and it came out in 2019. Some of these guys are from the band Terror,
Hmm.
and it is the title track from Nail's album, You Will Never Be One of Us. And yeah, there's not I didn't go for a lot of super pummeling songs, but this one kind of crosses the line into that.
Hmm.
There's a riff like about midway in where they kind of shift tempos and really assault you.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, I think the attitude of this song is what makes it heavy. I think that it's aggressive playing without feeling rushed.
Yeah.
And I see that in the fact that they're even cramming all this into a minute and a half. Um, so yeah, so they definitely got that less is more attitude from, the grindcore bands that came out of like late period hardcore. By late period, I mean, 80s rather than like, the early
Yeah.
80s. So post Minor Threat. But
Sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's a hard song to argue against. If whenever somebody wants to hear something really heavy, I usually just put that on for them. And
What actually made actually made me chuckle when I was doing a bit of research on these guys was it said the album is the longest release to date at 21 minutes. It just made me laugh so heartily. I was like, wow, okay.
yeah,
It's like bloody hell. Like
that's their prog album,
I know I was going to say topographic oceans. They were warming
right?
up at 20 minutes,
Yeah.
21 minutes. So yeah, again, one of those bands. The same friend who's really into Converge likes these guys a lot. Yeah, I mean it's kind of blisteringly fast. But yeah, quite a lot of grooves. I've seen some interviews with the main guy, and I don't know what his name is. Is it Todd Jones? Is that
Yep.
him? Dude, he comes across as a bit odd, kind of a bit of like a Mike Patton sort of character, kind of very contrary. Doesn't suffer fools too gladly. Kind of seems when he was being interviewed about music, he said, "Oh, I hate this, I hate that." I thought, bloody hell, he's worse than me. So, uh, so yeah, he was quite an interesting sort of character. But yeah, I mean, what can you say? It's it, it's a suitable length. You mentioned about hardcore actually, and on this album there's actually a Necros cover, Friend to All,
hmm
which kind of surprises me somewhat, considering the speed on this, makes Necros sound like ABBA by comparison. But it kind of makes sense, that they would be influenced by those guys as well. So, yeah, cool.
All right, what you got?
All right, so let's have a look at my list. I mentioned Melvins, and lo and behold, that's who we've got next. I've gone for something a bit obvious. I've gone for the song Hooch, and the reason for that is because that album that it comes from, Houdini, it was kind of my gateway into the band. It was produced, quote unquote, produced by Kurt Cobain for a bit. And it's certainly an accessible album. But Hooch is really, really heavy. I really love Dale Crover's drumming on this in particular, that sort of pounding style that he has. And what even makes me even chuckle even more is the absolutely preposterous lyrics. I mean, lost ticker toe rest, might like a sender do re. What on earth is he talking about? And that's what I've always loved about the Melvins is you got the contrast between this really serious, aggressive, heavy music a lot of the time, and these bizarre kind of, I don't know what you call them, like beef heartian type streams of consciousness that make absolutely no bloody sense whatsoever. So, but yeah, I mean, I would say definitely for people wanting to get into the Melvins, this tune might be a good starting place in comparison to, I don't know, some of their later more experimental work. So, yeah, Melvin's Hooch for me.
Right, yeah. So I've seen them play this song live a couple times,
Yeah,
and I think one time the Melvins were open up for Guar, and then I saw them on a Ozfest. And yeah, it's pretty powerful. I like the tension to it, and
sure.
that it's, darker, but not in a spooky way, more in there's a crazy old man in that house. Don't go into that lawn type manner.
Yeah,
Um, so it just all kind of falls into place and works really well. And the Melvins are great at what they do.
yeah.
And I think that the key to them is while they can go out into left field and be experimental, the fact that they experiment means that even when they get back into writing more concise songs like this one,
Hmm.
that everything is still a little bit off. It's not sounding like they're just writing a Helmet song. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
so there's more atmosphere, which I think that makes it heavier than if this was just like straight up go get 'em type 90s rock.
sure. Yeah, I mean, they're a very eccentric band. I mean, they're one of those bands that, although I'm a big fan of theirs, it's the rate at which they release records. I mean, it makes it really, really exhausting and really hard to keep up because you're like, bloody hell, I've only just listened to this album. There's another three on the way.
Yeah,
They don't
it's
mess around, that's
ridiculous.
for sure. But yeah, on a serious note, I think Hooch. It's probably one of my favorite tunes of theirs. I think theoretically, if you're a hardcore Melvins fan, Houdini's maybe not an album that, quote unquote, you should listen to. But I like that. I like it when they go a bit more back to basics in a way, at least for them, because they're really good at it. They're really good at
Right. And I think that the
it.
reason that like some Melvins fans don't like this album is because it was supposed to be their kind of like jump onto the grunge bandwagon.
Yeah.
Which did not pick up like the way the record label probably wanted it to. But, you know, I don't
Yeah,
they didn't care and they stuck to their guns and I
I
don't
mean,
consider it a sellout.
God, I mean, these Melbourne fans are talking about like they've become Days of the New or
Right.
something. Or it's, yeah, okay, it's a little bit more, it's produced a little bit better and maybe a little bit more direct, but for God's sake, they haven't gone, yeah, yeah, or done anything like
Right.
that. Just pretty much done what they do. Sorry, I like hooks occasionally.
Yeah. I mean,
Sorry.
I think it's more about the songwriting. I think this album, at the end of the day, will stand up better over time than maybe some of their more experimental stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Even though I like that stuff, yeah, I'm on board with that.
Right.
Cool.
Okay, now this is one of my favorite bands. But oddly, so before I saw them a couple years ago, and I'd never seen them live. Like I used to work security at a club that they would play, but I would always be outside working while they were playing.
Mm.
And yeah, whatever. Or I'd catch them in passing or what, whatever. Um, but I always liked the songs I always liked the albums with the original singer, Chris
Yeah.
Barnes, and was kind of on the fence with Corpse Grinder until I saw them live, and I was like, oh wait, he is better. And I mean, they were opening up for Amon Amarth, and I really only went to go see them, Obituary, and Frozen Soul. And yeah, I mean, Amon Amarth should not have even bothered showing up, but the song is Chaos Horrific. The album's Chaos Horrific. The song is Blood Blind. It's from the 2023 album. And they have faster songs, more intense songs, but I think this one just grooves and the vocals are more intentional and the lyrics, the part where he's going subjugate, subjugate, subjugate is I don't know, just like it's my go-to if I'm having to work out at 7 a.m. and just drinking my energy drink. This is the song that I listen to.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah, I mean, I can see why you would listen to something like this. I don't think something like the Smiths would be quite the right tone for
Mm-mm.
that sort of activity. But Cannibal Corpse, yeah, I mean, I've got to admit, I'm not the biggest fan. I like all the band members. I especially like Alex. He just seems like a really, really solid, really sweet, highly intelligent guy. They all seem like really nice guys, actually. Um, but I did have a listen to this song, and it was okay. It had a big groove to it, which kind of gave me because I really like Obituary when it comes to death metal. So it kind of gave me those sort of vibes, which made it a little bit more appealing. It wasn't just sort of like, that sort of
Hmm.
constant pounding, which, okay, fine. But it just seemed to have a little bit more groove and melody to it. Yeah, it was a good tune. I liked it.
Cool. All right, what you got?
All right, so oh dear. I've decided to go with Sleep, and rather than choose something obvious like Dragonaut or something, I've decided to go for Jerusalem. Now, I preface this by saying obviously Jerusalem was the original, and then I think it got remixed and became Dope Smoker. But I prefer Jerusalem where they cut the track up. But there's not much in it really. And it's basically, for those who are not familiar with the legend, they signed to London Records, which I think was the label that the Rolling Stones were on. And I don't know what they were thinking signing Sleep. I mean, like, you knew you were signing a stoner metal band that were planning to do a 52-minute song, and you're surprised you not got a hit out of it. But it's basically kind of in the same vein of, I guess, a band like Earth, and just with this long droning sound, just one pummeling riff after another, and of course lots of lyrics about smoking weed and all that sort of stuff. And I absolutely love it. I mean, it's crushingly loud. It's an endurance test as well, because sitting there for one 52-minute song, it takes a bit of effort, but I really like it for that reason. Again, as you know, I don't imbibe in substances or anything like that, but even I was feeling like, yeah, I can see why, if people were, why they would be into this song so much as well. So yeah, that is definitely a personal favorite of mine of Sleeps. And I can also see why the band sort of folded soon after. Obviously Matt Pike will go on to something which was the complete opposite end of the spectrum to this, as in did the other two guys with So yeah, it's Until the Sciences, it was probably one of my favorite records of theirs.
Yeah, I think that it's super effective at what it does. I mean, these guys are kind of took what St. Vitus was doing
Yeah.
and, and smoked it. So yeah, I think that definitely works. It's a good example of how atmosphere and repetition and just sonic density can be heavy.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, it's probably not as minimalist as say Earth, who I did mention earlier, but it has that same spirit, just of a sense of repetition.
I think
And
it's for the better that it's not that minimalist,
yeah,
because it
exactly.
drones, but there's enough to still kind of give you some meat and potatoes.
Sure. Yeah. And whilst I like Earth, that's a tough listen. I mean, at least there's some vocals, there's some slight tinges of melody as well. So yeah, and again, I know that some people, oh, I prefer Dope Smoke, I prefer Jerusalem. I'm not really that attuned when it comes to production, musical differences, and that kind of thing. I like both versions, but leaning slightly more towards Jerusalem. But I don't think there's that much in it,
Cool.
personally.
Yeah, I mean, I For me, those guys are always consistent, and yeah, they do what they do well.
The only album of theirs that's a bit odd is the very first record that they did, the one before Holy Mountain, because
Right, right,
that's
right.
that kind of, I don't know, his vocals are a bit different, maybe a little bit faster in places. It's a very, very different record to what they would do later. But for the most part, yeah, as you say, they are very consistent. I don't really, I think they're one of those bands who they haven't released anything that's embarrassing or bad or anything like that.
No, I don't think so. I think they were even their like reunion album still worked.
I love that record, yeah.
Cool. Well, my last one is going to be another 2023 album. It is from the band's Homicidal Ecstasy album, and the song is Faced Ripped Off by Sanguis Sugarbog. Sometimes I call them Sandwich Sugar Bear, but um, you know them from the memes making fun of their font. They actually have a lot of groove, and they kind of took what Cannibal Corpse started and took it in a more grindcore, deathcore direction.
Hmm.
Um, but it works, and I think that what works more for these guys than all the other bands in the I guess the slam subgenre is they care about songwriting, so that goes a long way.
Yeah, I mean, I had a quick listen earlier and listened to what they do. Do you remember a band called The Red Chord?
Hmm.
It kind of had those sort of vibes because there is a little bit of metalcore in there, I guess, from my very amateur metal ears, but there was that kind of slight vibe to it, and also there was a tongue-in-cheek approach to them. Is that right?
Yes, that is
They're
right.
not exactly very serious. Like they're
Mm.
not like I don't know, Deicide or something. They have,
No.
they don't take themselves too seriously. I remember talk about Deicide. I remember, I mean, that guy is such a wally. I mean, he was talking about not getting on a plane because he didn't want to be too close to heaven. I mean, come on, you know, that's very silly, man. At least these guys have got their tongues in their cheek and they sort of like, kind of know that they're a bit daft in a way, and their name is a bit odd. What does their name mean, even? Sorry, I meant to ask.
That's a good question. I'll have to do some chat GPTing on that. I think that they just, took like sanguine, like and combined it with some nonsense. So
Oh, fair enough.
let's see. The official, what does it mean? Let's see if the robot overlords know.
Although I have got a definition here actually that apparently sanguiso that
It means sanguissuga
yeah
means bloodsucker or leech.
yeah
And
and bog
so
it.
Bog is named after the guitarist Cameron Boggs,
Also,
which
there's
is slang for toilet.
yeah, that's it. I was just gonna say what we well, I don't use that term, but yeah, we in the UK we call toilets bogs.
So there we go. More has been revealed. Well, we're about to get zoomed, guys, but there you go. There's our top five heaviest albums, songs actually, but the albums are pretty heavy too. So go check those out, and we will be back next week with the top five most depressing songs. See you then.
Awesome.